All right, here we go. This is the Individual Skills Hockey Podcast with another episode of Playing Fast. We are, again, down in the depths of Plymouth Ice Center. Our usual podcast studio was taken by some third party. Won't mention it. Today we have Ben Monahan again back and Pat O'Leary to discuss the topic of whether or not you should ever shorten the bench in youth hockey. I think we all understand that youth hockey's opportunities for playing time in all situations should be somewhat guaranteed. But I'm curious on your thoughts on whether or not it's ever acceptable to shorten the bench and what some of those scenarios could be.
At Squirts, I certainly hope it never happens. Pee-wee's very minimal. Bantam, end of the year, district, region, lose or go home games. Again, you certainly see it. It happens. And I actually think a lot of associations might even have something in their handbook. So I do know St. Michael Albertville says in their handbook a kid can be sat for, or unfair play can happen in the last 5 minutes or half of the third period of a district game and or tournament game. So when you think of it, that's a lot of games. So I think when you get to that year-end tournament, the district, regions, state tournament, and you're tied 3-3 and you have 3 minutes left, it's pretty fair to say that 9 out of 10 teams are going to put out their top two lines. And if we don't think it happens everywhere. Whether or not that's right or wrong, you hate to see it, but it does happen. And everybody pays the same amount. That's what everybody always says. But I'll throw it on to you guys, and my son is playing high school. Everybody pays the same amount in high school too, and it all happens. So I think when you get to Bantams and those last district games, their district tournament regions, last 3-4 minutes of a close game, yeah. But again, like I said in a previous one, I hope when a team is up 10-0, maybe you call the dogs off and you're playing your third line more. And again, you're making up for it in ways that maybe people don't understand.
Yeah, I think, it's another one of those ones for me. Like, I don't know if you can put like an age limit on it, but, I 100% agree on those speculations on what that would be. But I think the biggest thing for me, and now that I've coached, obviously, high school hockey and Bantam hockey and in the depths of coaching U10 hockey, I think at some point, you have to here's what I'll say. You can use it, I believe, for a disciplinary situation. I think that's, and I'm not saying the first game of I'm saying like in a tournament or whatever the case may be, or a district. That's where it gets weird for me is like, okay, a district game is more important than whatever game and, the end of the season. So, and there's another way to look at it too. So you think about, which is how it should be. In Squirt and U10 hockey, there's a district tournament, but that's it. There's no state tournament, there's no regional tournament, so why are you doing it other than for a disciplinary reason, right? And I think another thing that happens as well, and I think it creeps in a little bit more as we get a little bit older, but, these kids need to learn that, the reasoning behind shortening the bench isn't always what they think. It's not always like we're putting the 5 best players out there. Why are we pulling the goalie? All the situations. A lot of it, I think, and I can speak for myself, is like we just talked about, is we're trying to put the best kids out there that seem like they want to get out there and like are very involved and stuff. No, not all kids are like that, so you can't push that on people. But there's some kids that don't want to be out there, right? So, but I think in general, it's you got to develop as many kids as you possibly can. You got to get them all understanding what it's like to play, early and often and late and often, and and all those things. But I think discipline is such a big thing. If we don't nip that in the bud at a young age of understanding, like taking dumb penalties or, questioning how much ice time they have, how long their shifts are, disrespecting coaches, all those kind of things. Those kind of things is why we coach. Is like, parents can say whatever they want to the kids, but coaches play a big role in ingraining that discipline and team first motto and stuff into them. And I don't know what age that should be at, but it should start pretty young.
And like Coach said in one of our previous ones here is every kid should have that opportunity to play at the power play at some point in time in their youth career. Same thing should be said for a close hockey game. You would hope every kid has had the opportunity to see the ice up 3-2, down 3-2, in a hockey game. And again, coaches that are doing it, wisely, you can do, each game differently. You can do that championship game of a tournament or whatever, or year-end deal when you're up 3-2 differently than you can do with a scrimmage against whoever it might be in November. And then maybe there you're letting the whole bench play at the end of the game. So everybody gets that opportunity to be up or down one going into the last minute of a game.
Agree. I wanted to bring up something that happens a lot. Let's say you have 2 kids out sick, and all of a sudden you have 8 forwards. So you're going to roll 2 centers. What happens every single time? The 2 best kids get rolled every other shift on 2 centers. Do you view that as shortening the bench? And, I mean, obviously the playing time is not going to be equal there, so how do you view that situation?
No, I don't think that's shortening the bench. I mean, it depends how many D you had. If you're sitting with 4D, then you go 8 and 4. Or if you're sitting with 5D, then you probably should have moved a D up and let them try forward. But I don't view 2 centers as shortening the bench. I view that as just you're given a number of 8, and the best way to do it is 8 and 4. Now, depending upon the level, again, it can be different. If I'm coaching my daughter's team, who is a 12B player, I'm probably going 8 and 4, and I'm just running the 8 forwards because there's no maybe rhyme or reason to what they're doing, and they're all in development out there. If I'm coaching a Bantam AA team, 2 centers is going to be pretty tough to do it there too. So I might be switching it up by the period. So it's 2 players double shifting this period, and then maybe 2 others double shifting the next. So it's kind of different game by game or level by level, but I don't view that as shortening the bench, no.
Yeah, and I think you're right. And I think for me personally, I would say that, the first thing when comes to my mind when I do that is, or think about it is, you got to start on the back end first, right? You have to have at least 4D that can play, and then from there you build up front, I think is kind of how I would operate with it. Meaning, you get really short and things change, but if you got 8 and 4, you got to stick with 4, and then you got to figure out how you're going to operate in the middle of the lineup, or if you want to do wings or however you want to do it. But I think it's just teaching them to understand. That's another lesson that they can learn on how you roll through the lineup, whether it's, okay, there's one way to look at it. Hey, we're doing 2 centers, so you 3 sets of wings, you stay together and it helps on the change, right? Or you think of it a different way, which is even harder, that Ben said, which is what we do a lot too, is we have 8 forwards, and it's like, okay, you got to keep trickling down the bench towards the coach that's letting you out, and now we got to figure out who's playing left wing, right wing, and center. And you have to communicate that so you know who you're going out with. Otherwise, they're just aloof and they're not learning how to do that. There's nothing to do with face-offs because that's very easy, but it's like I'm changing for somebody. It's like, okay, now I'm playing left wing. So it makes them alert too. So I don't know if that's the right way or the wrong way, but like he said, I think it has to do with games and where you're at and who the kids that you have are, and also on top of it, who you're playing.
Yeah, another situation I want to bring up is, and we talked about this in a previous episode about a penalty kill units, and I think let's say in a game you have a peewee game and your team takes 6 penalties in a period. You have a player that has struggling to understand what his or her role is on the penalty kill. I think a lot of times you see that player not get a whole lot of ice time in that period. And I think a lot of times it happens when coaches aren't realizing it's happening until the end, and the kid might go like, I only got 2 shifts that period. Like, what happened there? So just talk a little bit about that situation and kind of how this stuff could creep up on a coach without them really with them having good intentions at the start of the game and then turning around and being like, oh, oops.
I mean, again, it's game by game and team by team, but you would hope the coach is paying attention to what's going on. And just use, for example, say this is a Wayzata Maple Grove Peewee AA game, and maybe a kid did get missed some, but then I would hope that the coach would be aware of that and would acknowledge it, talk to the player, and then make it up to that kid or two the next game they play somebody else and get that kid more ice time. Or when you get to the penalties, you get a period like that, it kind of sucks, but you kind of just have to explain to the team right when it happens, like, hey, I understand that not everybody's getting the equal amount of playing time. Stay out of the box, and it helps our entire team. But, maybe one kid got 20-second shifts 3 in a row, and the other kid was getting 45 seconds. But just acknowledge it immediately and let the team know that there's nothing that he can do sometimes. We want to get the lines back to the way they were to start the next period, whatever it might be, but just hit it right at the right when it happens, and then try and make it up for a kid or two or three kids in one of the next games.
Yeah, and that's a tough one. I think, for me personally, it's like, and speaking to that level of hockey, or even Bantams are more higher than that. I think it's a great time that you can, if you made a mistake, rectify that mistake. But moreover, come at it from a different perspective. Is it the same kid taking penalties all the time? Have we been doing a lot of penalty taking over the last month? Is that a problem with our squad? And I think it might take some bumps and bruises for a while, but like that allows you to maybe, and a lot. I'm not. I'm just guessing here, but like maybe some of those kids taking the penalties are your better kids, either because they're on the ice more, or whatever the case may be. So there's time in the season when you can use that as leverage in a discipline situation, and kind of vault that kid up. Maybe that's your quote unquote ninth forward, whatever that means, and get him some ice time over just because he works hard and he's a good kid and he hasn't been taking penalties, and so on and so forth. You're walking a fine line there, obviously, but at the same time, like, it's probably not going to happen in the championship of a district tournament, but early in the season you can start explaining to kids, like, we're not taking dumb penalties all the time, that we have to shorten the bench, but we're not going to do that, and we are going to make up for it at some point and show that these kids that are working hard and give everything they can in practice need to learn and do it as well. So I don't know. That's hard. I mean,
I think Ben mentioned it. Realizing that you may have made a mistake as a coach and having honest communication back to the player goes a long way. And I can think of a couple of situations. I had one last year where we had 7D on the bench for a high school game. And 7D is tough to manage. Trying to get everyone out on the ice.
Possible.
And yeah, it's hard. And I don't know how NHL teams do it, to be honest. But all of a sudden, actually it was the next day of practice. A D came up to me and said, like, why didn't I play that very much last night? I felt like I was playing well. And I was just straight up honest with him. And I was like, I screwed that up. I didn't know how to manage those 7D properly, and we were down a goal. So I was trying to get other guys out there. And I just straight up said, like, I screwed this up for you. He really appreciated that, and I think it paid dividends in the next few games, knowing that his coach was aware of the problem and also had trust in the player. And so stuff like that can go a really long way. Not getting defensive. Maybe a parent comes up to you and asks a question in good faith about something that occurred in a previous game. Honestly, evaluating that and having good communication goes a long way.
I was going to say the communication part is key. Is just at your parent meeting too, explaining how you're going to operate things depending upon what your association allows and doesn't allow, so the parents know up front that, hey, the last 4 minutes we might do this. But to Pat's, what he said is it might always be the same kids, or might be one of your superstars that was not working hard the entire game, and therefore you're not going to play him the last 3 minutes and reward somebody else that had been working hard on that last couple shifts.
All right, I think we can wrap this one up. Just to summarize, and you can correct me if I'm wrong what we've talked about, but equal playing time is a goal and a priority at all levels of youth hockey. I think that's a blanket statement that we can all agree upon. Disciplinary issues are completely acceptable to communicate or demonstrate. Your actions have consequences sometimes. Those are going to be like disrespect. They're not going to be like physical hockey mistakes, of course. They're going to be disrespecting the refs or not being a good teammate. And then having clear and honest communication about certain situations that may be coming up later in the year. If we're in the championship game, if we're in the region tournament at the Pee-wee and upper level Pee-wee and Bantam levels, this may occur towards the end of the game so that people are ready for it. Did I hit everything?
It sounds good to me.
Spot on.
All right, we will see you next time. This is an episode of Playing Fast with the Individual Skills Hockey Podcast. See ya.